Hi, my name is Amanda, and this is a video collaboration project for EDU 580, a Georgetown College class on teaching methods of ESL students. So this is Miss L here at Glendover Elementary, and she has been so nice to let me collaborate with her on one of her ESL students for a writing unit. So to start off, Miss L has a few CLD students, or culturally and linguistically diverse students, which is a more positive term than English language learners or English as a second language learners. So can you, I guess, just say a few things about who you have in your class just in general, some of their native languages or where they're at?
I have a few Hispanic students. I have one from South Africa who speaks French. I have one from India, and that might be it. But I have pretty diverse class in here.
All right, so I chose to work with one of her Hispanic students, and so when we started talking about this student, one of the first things that I asked her about was his ESL scores. So every year he takes the access test, and luckily this student has been at Glendover since early start, so all of his records are here, and so all of his transitions have been very smooth from one teacher to another and having documentation on everything. And so I had showed Miss L his access scores, which are also in my paper that Dr. Brody will be reviewing. But we discussed how his increases in certain areas were really great. So for example, his listening went up almost 2 points from developing to expanding. So he's in the 4.9 expanding range, which is very close to meeting the other levels of reaching or bridging. But we talked about some of his lower areas, which are his literacy skills and comprehension, and also his reading and writing. So we've noticed that listening, speaking, and oral language are very high, but she can see these things in her classroom too, I believe. So we were modifying a lesson on writing a biography, yes. And the student got to choose a famous person that he wanted. So he has chosen to write on David Beckham, a football.
He likes soccer.
Yeah, his soccer guy. So the student has been reading some books or some different internet resources, I believe, on the famous futbolista. And he is getting ready to start the writing process of it, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so we just met yesterday, and I looked at the lesson plans for what your class will be doing, and we talked about modifying some of the graphic organizers, right? So let's see here. We first looked at, and I'll try to show if we can find one for the camera, if that's okay. All right, so this graphic organizer, all of the students in Miss L's class will be doing, and it'll be a really great resource for them to use while they're reading their internet resources or the books that they've brought in. So the student that I've worked with, he will be able to complete this, but he will have some assistance during that time. And we also discussed the modification, since there are Hispanic students in his class, if they could have a little bit of group time together where they could speak in Spanish on the different famous people that they have chosen. And that way, with one another in a language they're comfortable with, they can ask questions about the early life and what are they famous for and when were they born before that they begin writing in English. And then in a next lesson, the students will be taking all of that information and the second grade team here at school, let's see, they have put together this research paper, and the student will be able to use all of these questions. So you've got your introduction. They'll write a few sentences about early childhood, family, and it goes on to ask about education and other parts of his life. But then the student will be able to use this to write his rough draft. And we talked about modifying expectations and the checklist that will be used. So I think the other students in the class will be expected to write 3 sentences?
Yeah, an introduction, 3 sentences or facts, and then at least 1 conclusion sentence. If they want to add more, that's great, but with this student, we said we could modify it and make it a little less so because writing is such a problem for him.
Okay, so since writing is difficult, luckily the student will have pull-out ESL time where he'll be working in a small group on the same topic, which is nice because our ESL teachers, though it is pull-out, they are still doing integrated content method of teaching. So they're teaching biographies as compared to learning about seasons or months of the year. So that is some of the stuff that we've done with the lesson plans, and there's a lot more in the paper. But one other thing that I wanted to share with Miss L while working with ESL students was the difference in BICS and CALP. So if you're studying teaching English as a second language, it's a term that you probably know. Classroom teachers maybe not so much. But I've talked to multiple teachers who have said like that this student gets along really well in the cafeteria or on the playground, communicating with peers in the class, or even just talking face to face. And then sometimes when they're doing something where they have to show what they know and they're using their skills of writing, or they're talking to you about comprehending a text, the level isn't the same. And so that's the difference in the basic interpersonal communication skills, which is what we usually see with students and what they're doing day to day, compared to the CALP part, which is the cognitive academic language proficiency. So I shared with Miss L, I'll try to show you this here, hold it up a little bit, the iceberg or glacier? What would you call
iceberg
this?
Maybe because like the big parts hidden underneath the water.
And so on the BICS model, and I really like this diagram, and I'll tell you the website where it is in a second. But so the BICS, the basic interpersonal communication skills, is what you see, and so that's the top part, 1/3 of what you see of an iceberg, and also what we see of our students' most day-to-day interactions. And then the CALP, his cognitive language, is what's underneath the water, and it's a lot harder for students to gain this knowledge. It takes a lot more time. So that model is at a supporting all WordPress blog that I'll make sure to post in the information of this video. So it's been really nice working with Miss L and her students, and she's been really great letting me come in here and see what they're doing and emailing me all of their plans as we work on modifying the lessons. But I believe that's pretty much it, unless you want to say anything
been doing
else.
A great job.
So that's all we've got, I believe. Oh, yes. Thank you, Miss L. One of our last little things that I'll say, and then we'll wrap up because this is longer than I thought. ESL students and the teachers that work with them every day do an access testing every year, and we talked about the students' scores, but there are also standards that a lot of classroom teachers don't know about. So I brought in my lovely WIDA book and the standards and showed Miss L just how exactly they break it up. So I showed her second grade language arts, and so we looked at, let's see if we can get this in the camera here, the different sections, and we talked about where the student is, whether he is in entering, which he has progressed into the higher stages, but developing, expanding, bridging, and he's even scored in the reaching categories in a few of them. So we looked at these and we talked about the can-do descriptors that are also explained. And then I also showed her the other English proficiency WIDA book, which has more examples, whereas it goes with listening and speaking. Let's look at the others. Reading and writing. And so for the unit, the second grade team, I think they collaborate together. Yep. Is that correct? To do content objectives, and a lot of times those content objectives will be language objectives. They're just not separated. So whether it's I can ask questions about a text, or I can orally explain the who, what, when, where of a text. And so we talked about separating those a little bit based on whether it's content or language skills. So thank you for reminding me of that.
No problem.
All right. I think that's it then.
All right.
Thank you.
It was nice working with you.